Welcome, fellow Dungeon Master. Has this ever happened to you? So your party went astray during their seafaring adventure when you described that pod of dolphins as being a little less innocent than you meant to. Or even worse. Your party decides, you know what? That group of farmers we just saved, they didn't pay us enough. Let's go get them. Or even worse. Your party interprets your description of stone giants of being intelligent and civil as being accepting of all small folk. Or even worse. The simple song you described your party hearing in the last inn they were in, singing of an ancient white dragon, led them to derail from any quest they were on and head straight to the spine of the world to hunt it down. If any of these or something similar has happened to you, then you know the importance of basic terrain maps for random encounters that might pop up. So stick around because in this short video, we're going to talk about these 4 maps I designed and where you can download them. Hi, my name is Brandon Moore of More D&D. I'm a forever DM, and I recognize that those scenarios were a bit far-fetched, but if you're anything like me, then you've had players that want to chase down the most minute detail that you didn't mean to over-explain, and now you're stuck on a wild goose chase to a place that you're not ready for, that'll need a map that you don't have. Well, I got tired of being put in that scenario, so I developed 4 basic terrain maps based on the most common terrains we've run into, and I sized them perfectly to fit in the map section of my D&D table. If you're new to the channel and you're not sure what I mean by my D&D table, go back to my last video where I describe everything involved in making this beast behind me. And if this kind of content interests you, don't forget to subscribe. That way you get a notification anytime I make a new video, and it'll really help me get the word out to people with similar interests. So I pride myself in being ready for any scenario, especially when it's pre-printed and pre-described, such as these beautiful maps and scenarios from Lost Mines of Phandelver designed by Mike Schley.
Which, by the way, if you know that you're playing Lost Mines and you haven't before, don't be looking at this map because I don't want your DM coming after me.
Okay.
So as my adventurers go through their campaign and they show up at these predetermined scenarios, I'll lay out these beautiful maps, and everything will go nice and smooth.
Not a chance.
But what if your party wants to travel north of Neverwinter? Something that's not printed in the book. And they decide to keep going and going until the point where they're near 10 towns up in the spine of the world, and then they want you to describe what they might hear or see in the middle of the night as they're camping out in the Arctic, and you accidentally mention that they hear a sound a few hundred feet this way. And then they decide to check it out, and you continue to babble, and then all of a sudden you've mentioned that they see a frost giant with 2 pet winter wolves fighting a remoraz as an abominable yeti and 2 regular yetis come charging into the fray. Well, now you're caught. What are you going to do?
Sheesh.
Well, that's where these maps come in. So now all of a sudden you find that you're throwing these pieces out here just after you put the map down, and you have yourself an encounter that you weren't prepared for, but luckily for you, you printed out these maps, and you were actually ready to do this on the fly. So these maps are obviously very versatile, having the grid on them already, having a beautifully designed terrain. You're kind of ready for almost any scenario, but tack on the added benefit of a plexiglass sheet on top, and you opened up a whole new world of design here. Let's say, for instance, that the Yetis were hiding behind a couple giant boulders behind them. Well, you just take a black one, throw a couple squiggles on here, and then let's say you wanted this to be a 15-foot rock and a 10-foot rock. Well, now all of a sudden you've got some terrain on there that wasn't already on the picture itself. And now let's say you want to notate where this remoraz is leaving its burrow holes as it goes in and out of the dirt. Well, you can just signify that here. And all of a sudden you've got some holes that the players may need to be aware of as they're running through the terrain. And as I mentioned, I have 4 types of terrain. You guys have been seeing the snowy terrain that I have currently underneath the plexiglass, but then additionally I have this rocky terrain here, which I use for most of my cave scenarios or tunnel scenarios. And here you can get a good look at what I have it made out of. I had this printed at a local shop called Image 360 if you're here in Maryland. It's made of a vinyl banner material. This is an exterior banner use. The only thing they want to make sure that you know is that you want to make sure you don't get any alcohol on this because that will immediately dissolve this ink and ruin the map. I also have this grassy terrain, which probably gets the most use because in most situations we're doing overland travel across some grassy area. So any encounters they run into, I pull this one out. And finally we have what is probably my favorite map here, the water map because it's such a vibrant blue and I love how it was printed. The color came out great. And usually when I break this out, that means we're on some kind of seafaring adventure, which I'm a big fan of. So, love when I get to pull this map out. Now, I do want to note that I recognize that maps are not an imperative part to D&D or any other TTRPG for that matter. If you and your group love to play using the theater of mind, I highly support that. I think it's so much fun, and I find that it really lets the group's imagination run wild. The way I look at maps is that they're just another layer of immersion, and if you have them, it's a way for your party to just get a little bit more involved visually and be able to see what's going on. So if random encounter maps like this interest you, I do have all 4 currently available on my Patreon, which I'll link down below. The grass map is completely free to anyone that visits. The other 3 are made immediately available to anyone becoming a patron as one of my fellow adventurers, and you'll be able to download it right away and make it yours to use however you'd like. I really hope I'm able to help with some of your pesky encounters you weren't expecting, and let me know down below what kind of scenarios you've run into that you really weren't ready for. Thanks so much for stopping by, and I can't wait to see you in my next video.